folks, I'm L.A. Little, and this is your daily TA wrap, where we take a look at these markets from a neoclassical perspective, and we ask ourselves what happened today, and what does it tell us about the coming day. I do the show 4 times a week, Monday through Thursday, live at 9 o'clock Eastern Time, here on the beautiful Rocky Mountain Highline. So today we had a pretty good beating. The market took a nice beating, as a matter of fact. Sorry about the volume there when I came on. Looks like it was pretty high, so we kicked it back down here so it won't kill you. Wasn't watching there, so we'll try to keep that corrected next time. As far as these markets, let's just pop into the numbers. It was a bludgeoning today in terms of what happened. We finally saw something we haven't seen for quite a while, and that is that you actually got selling in the high flyers. I mean, just go down the list. You know, Tesla, Facebook, all these things that just wouldn't come in. Some of them had been showing a little bit of weakness, but most of them hadn't. And I've got a list of all these guys. If I go through them and look at most of them just got beat up. And you can't get the end of a decline, if that in fact is what's coming, until some of these bigger ones really start taking it on the chin. Some of these high flyer ones, and you know the names. I mean, everybody hears about the stock that's doubled or tripled or whatever. Well, if they go up that fast, they can certainly come back that fast. As a matter of fact, last night we were talking about Facebook, and I think that was the last question I dealt with last night. It was talking about it could take a 10% haircut and nothing be wrong with it, right? And it took probably 5 or 6 today. I don't know what the ending number was on it. So that's the sort of thing that happens when you have big corrections or decent sized corrections where those untouchables actually get touched. And today the industrial's down 160, 14,776. S&P's down 21 almost, 1655, 45. Composite 75.5 lower, 3694, almost 3695. The NDX down 62 almost, 3153, almost 3154. The Russell, it was another large loser. So we had 2% down on the NASDAQ, almost 2% on the NDX, and 1 3/4% on the Russell. Notice the Dow was the least down today because the Dow is so washed out, and the S&P's next because it also has been taking a beating. Russell was down 18.5, 1047.25. Elsewhere, it was pretty flat, pretty much elsewhere. I mean, there really wasn't a lot of happening. It was just money coming out of the equities. It actually did rotate. Some of the money did rotate into some of the safer sectors to start with, and it has been, the potential for a beating has been coming, and we saw it today. And I don't know that that's something to get overly concerned about. There are some larger picture issues that need to be talked about, but in terms of today, let's pop into the actual charts, and we'll start talking about some of the ramifications, I guess, maybe is a better way. So we had 2 or 3 things happen today. First of all, we've had the same thing happening that's been happening, and that is that nothing's happening in Washington, right? And that continues to put fear. Today you had Ritholtz and some of the others talking about huge losses in the stock market if they don't get this solved. A government shutdown for a month, I think he said would either 20 or 30%. I didn't read the article. I don't know what his, he actually had a conference going on, I think, where those numbers came out. I didn't see how he came to those conclusions, but you can tag any kind of number you want on these things. I mean, I could do projections on the downside as well. How much you believe them? Well, it depends on your system and how you look at stuff. And I don't know where his numbers come from, but this sort of large declines, right? It's October, it's that time of the year, we've had a big run, we're going to just fall off the cliff. Well, yeah, we may, but as I've said before, until we get the structure in place, I don't think it's going to happen. We're starting to get the structure in place, though, and so it's time to actually talk about it a little bit. ABCD down, complete. If you take the way I count it, it's completed. If you take the way others might count it, it has 1044 as its target. Excuse me, 1644 as its target. So that would get it down in this bar. Today, yesterday or the last couple days, we've been talking about getting into this bar as a problem. We got into it twice, couldn't stay. Yesterday we stayed in it, never could get out of it this morning, and then we started to dig into it. And once we did, it's like the floodgates opened up and they just sold it. Now what this is starting to do, and I've talked about this previously, we talked about it Sunday, is starting to set up a structure that could be problematic. And that structure is that you have a swing point low that, unless we have a real wipeout this week, that's going to end up being a swing point low that, if it breaks, also is the lows that you see here on the daily chart. That will be problematic. So as we come down into this area, you can see that the danger is growing for that structure to put itself into motion and something larger actually happen here. As far tomorrow, with respect to the SPX, there's nothing here that tells you this thing's going to bounce. Your volume expands as you come into this low. You actually take it out. You're trying to get into this bar now. This is the big volume bar that demarcates the bottom. That guy's 1652. Now what happened after the close, which will put another wrench into all of this, is the Wall Street Journal, and I didn't see if it was, I didn't see who the author was, but the Wall Street Journal is printing that Yellen is going to be named for the chairmanship tomorrow as the nominee. And Yellen, of course, is the Bernanke in disguise. She's just as helicopter Ben, I guess we'll call her helicopter Yell, because she's got the same ideals as Bernanke. So of course the market likes that, and we had a little bit pickup after hours. Looks like the Nasdaq up about eight points or so, 0.25%. If I look at earnings, we had Alcoa report today. They're up, and I don't pay all that much attention. They're up about 1.5%. That's not going to get them anywhere. The other big number today was Yum. They were down about 6 or 7% after hours, and that's just going to take them. So both of these look like it doesn't matter. This one's going to test the low. Alcoa is just going to test up into resistance, as we just saw. So, it's not going to change anything. What's going to change something is the earnings that start coming out on Friday and next week. That's when we start getting some of the larger names, some of the larger numbers, and that's where we'll see how this market's going to react to earnings. Now, it has sold down deeply into earnings, and that usually can set up a pretty good bounce. It's just going to be a question when it does, is what does it look like and how does it trade? Dow Jones coming into the bottom, volume expanding 1.02, it's coming into 1.18. You can see the volume's not quite there. It hasn't hit the lows. That's probably going to try to hit them tomorrow. The thing is here is, after you get a big sell-off today and volume does expand, which it did today, you can get one of two things. Either you can get a wipeout, right? Not so much a wipeout, but a larger push with larger volume expansion, right? As those people that are stuck try to get out. The other case, and we've had a bull market, the other case is that you get a bounce, an immediate bounce out of this. Now, the bounces have been coming all along, not in this chart, but if you go to the Nasdaq, they haven't even let this thing come down. Today's the first day they really took it apart, and that's kind of what we were talking about with Facebook, with Apple, some of these others coming down pretty hard. This push down, right, with volume expansion into the highs, right, is doing its retest regen finally. Let me see those highs, 36.94. So 36.94 is the number. It got to 36.94.15. So it got into it. and you can see volume expanding. So the retest regen is on. So tomorrow, the question will be is, does it come out of here? This is after 6 bars. Once you get more than 6 bars, the first time back usually is a buy. And even though we're coming into it with heavier volume, I would not be surprised, even if we test lower tomorrow, I would be not surprised to see this thing try to bounce out of here. That's going to be true on the NDX as well. I don't know if it got into the swing points. Let's see. Looks like it almost did. If not, 31.49 1/4, and not quite. So this one also, again, we could get a little testing lower in the morning. I expect Asia is going to have a tough time tonight because they haven't given it up much. Europe has been giving it up some. So Europe will kind of be the swing trade in terms of what this thing does in the morning. If Europe is able to hold tonight, then we'll probably see a little bounce first and then we come back. But I suspect it's going to try to do its test. We'll see how that test goes. That will be the test that tells us what kind of bounce are we going to get, and does this volume expand more into that test. If it does, that's problematic. That sets up the larger structure. Now, if volume dissipates on the test and you get a good bounce out of it, then that could change everything. But right now, it's starting to put the structure in place for a larger decline. What one would want to do is to get more careful as this thing bounces. So let's read those tea leaves as they happen. But right now, it is problematic the way it's starting to set up. NDX, same. So let's go to the Russell. The Russell actually came down nice and hard today too. Now the Russell had already done a retest regen, had regenerated higher, and now it comes back and breaks support. So the Russell's trying to come into, so that bar was the breakout here on the high, and that one hasn't been retested and regenerated this high. 1044. And it's almost to it, right? 1047. So just like the others, the Russell wants to do a retest regen off of it. If you compare it to the breakout bar, it's got 369 and it's coming back with 356. So the Russell isn't expanding terribly. So this one actually looks like a retest regen would regen. NASDAQ NDX, questionable because volume's expanding back into those retests, although they are more than 6 bars. So again, it looks to me like it's going to be another stick save here, either with another further test in the morning or an immediate bounce out of here, one of the two. The other thing you have to realize that kind of leads to the whole idea of a bounce out of here is if we go over and start looking at the sectors, and I didn't get a chance to look through all of these yet, but as you look at these sectors, what you're going to see is you're going to see most of these starting to play out in terms of their ABCD structures on the way down, their bearish ABCD structures. So if I look at, starting with the IYT, if I look at the ABCD structure that was in place, this one is almost done. Volume not that heavy. It's coming into this swing point. The bottom is not that far away. Actually, it looks like it's under it. And I don't see any great spots here. I mean, you can come down into this bar, 114.54. That target is about 114.82 on the ABCD structure. If I look at the SMHs, they finally started to give it up. Remember, these guys wouldn't give anything up. They finally gave it up. But all they're going to do is come back in and do some testing into support. And they got a nice big support, a bunch of bars into this area if they get down to the second support area. But if I start flipping through these sectors, XLB, it's already done. It's already finished the ABCD. Yeah, volume expands. It's into the next swing point, volume expanding. That bar it broke out on, so it can test down into this next zone here. But again, ABCD structure's done. XLE, it's almost done. It's within 0.1%. XLF, even as bad as this one looks, it still has farther to go, almost another %. So the XLF could trade down almost into the lows. But again, we're getting close in terms of all the ABCD structures finishing out. I didn't look at all of these, so let me go back and look at the rest of these. So here's the XLY. This one really got beat up today. That looks like that one's almost done. XLV, in terms of ABC bearish, XLV has farther to go. So the other day I was talking about it testing and failing, and now it's coming back pretty hard as a result. Now it sets up an ABCD structure on the way down. Actually, it had, no, that is the first time it had it. So it was one of the strongest ones left. We saw money rotate into XLU, XLP. Let me see what they look like. They actually held on the XLU, and so they're moving into things that have already been beaten up and that are paying dividends. So you can see not all the money wanting to escape, but certainly wanting to move to something quote unquote safer. And lastly, let me look at the XLK, XLI. That's an ABCD down that looks like it has completed, and now it's got a secondary one in place that looks like it's completed. 32.59. Yeah, that one's completed. So two sets of them completed here. And that one could actually come into these lows down in this area, this last support zone. But I think you're going to see a bounce out of these things, because as I look at more and more sectors almost complete, I mean, sure, it's possible that you just wash out, but given this market, I wouldn't be surprised to see some sort of a bounce out of this area. XLI looks pretty bad, huh, with the volume expansion. And so that's got an ABCD down. I didn't do the calculation. The first one's done. The second one looks done too. So they all look done. So most of these are done. And if I go over to the auxiliary markets, there's really nothing there tonight. I didn't see anything happen with respect to bonds, with respect to the dollar. They all just stood still. So it appears to me that what you're going to get here is some sort of a bounce setting up, and then we'll have to see, well, two things. Do we get the finishing off, if you will, of the test of the retest regens on the Russell, on the NDX, on the NASDAQ, right? Does the Dow test the lows? Does the SPX test that high of the low wide price spread high volume bar, right? If all those things, those tests take place and the volume's lighter, then you can get a nice bounce. If those tests remain out there and don't happen and we simply bounce in front of them, which is possible in this Yellen news, you know, then you're just simply setting up the case that you get some sort of a bounce, some sort of a relief valve, if you will, and then potentially you come right back down again. If I go look at, before I take your questions, if I go look at the world markets, they're in most cases they're stronger than our markets at this particular time, and that's because they've been much weaker than our markets for the last year and a half. Here's the DAX. The DAX is coming back into support. Remember, it has a breakout here over a bar from back on May 20th, and that breakout is getting tested. Volume is a little heavier, so it can pull back a little bit farther and do the retest regens off of these potentially. But still, volume's not expanding that much as it comes back. The CAC's actually still looking pretty well, good as well. It's been testing into the support area, into the retest regen. There was two breakouts. It's testing and above. Volume's not that big. Again, these will be, the European market will kind of be setting the tone for us in the morning, because they've been pulling back like we have. Question is will they rally now, or at least not go down and allow us? The FTSE is the one that's taking the beating. It's down here breaking swing point lows today. If I pull it over and look at it on a weekly, that's setting up an ABCD structure to try to get back into the lower ones. So I'm not sure. You know, I know that the FTSE has a lot more of the mining and so forth, and it looks to me like that's weighing on it. If I go over to Asia, though, Australia kind of dependent on China with all its resources, has been coming back in, but that, you know, doesn't look too bad. It's coming back in to do a retest on the support area. It's got another lower support area. Held today, volume expanded. Probably test lower again tonight. We'll see if it tries to turn or if it simply takes a washout. What was the other one? Oh, where's the Hong Kong? The Hang Seng. Here's the Hang Seng. And that one doesn't even want to give it up. Yeah, it's holding tight. On the weekly, this thing is trying to get to the highs, right? And Hang Seng still looks fine. And that's interesting because that will typically support the commodities. The one that has actually been doing the best has been Taipei based on chips. And yeah, I mean, it actually broke over the highs and is going for the highs out there from last year. I mean, this past May. They're not that much farther up. There was a high volume high here is trying to go tag. Of course, they'll probably get pushed down tonight just based on what happened with their chips. But volumes look pretty good here. Let me see what Brazil and India and some of these others I don't typically look at. Their resources, at least Brazil is. Brazil trying to hold that swing point high retest regen. And so far it is. How about where is Canada? Here's Canada. Let's see what Canada looks like. Now Canada is more like the FTSE in that it's heavier into the mining, and they're kind of taking a little bit of a hit, but not bad. So it's more resources, but a lot of gold and silver as well. So and those stocks are struggling here. I can't see anything to get extremely worried about, but folks, we are setting up a structure that could be problematic. I'll look at Japan right quick, and then let me go and take a look at your questions. Japan coming into support, so in a big range, nothing there. Okay, so what do we got here? Question-wise, my article retraces. Please follow up on the article. There was an article that I did on Adobe and Amgen. I suspect this is the one you're talking about. If I pull this out a little bit, so I think the question is that given what happened with Amgen today, if we look at Amgen, Amgen took a pretty good smacking today. Let me pull it up for you. So that article was talking about retraces and talking about the fear that leads people, what is it that keeps people from buying into retraces? And as I pull up Amgen, you can see here that we had a retrace coming in. I said that was a buy point, buy the retrace. I actually did buy that retrace. And as it popped back up, it was coming back into this bar, and I did tell subscribers in our chat room that day that it popped up, it tested this top. And I told them that the next day, if we didn't get it to push up, it was time to take the money off that trade. And if I look at, let me go back here and find it, Amgen. So if I go and look at Amgen, that particular trade was this bar. So we came in here, that's the bar that you see on this graph. And we came in, and I'm going to pull this back in now. We came in, we tested back into the top of this bar, didn't have any volume. That was the signal to try to get out. And the next day you didn't get as nearly as good, but you still could have gotten out for a small profit as it opened up. So now you take a bigger push down, and now you're testing into the bottom of this bar because it's a gap, which is the bottom of this area. So tomorrow maybe potentially sets up another buy on a retrace, or you may want to wait until this lower one. I don't fear buying retraces, and the reason for it is I sell them when they push up. And that was what this article was about. Adobe was another name that was in there. I didn't pay that close attention to Adobe today because I actually like Adobe on a different time frame, not just on the daily. Amgen was a flip trade, whereas Adobe to me is a longer one. Adobe, got hit pretty good. Adobe could close the gap potentially. So this one, I'm taking a beating on because I did buy it. I bought it as it came back into the gap, just as I talked about in the article. So, some of them work right away, some don't. I mean, this was a big gap, so it can fill it. But if it fills it, comes back into here, it's probably a good buy there. again, buying the retraces is not a bad idea. The real issue, though, is if the larger structure of the market starts to turn against you, then you don't just blindly buy retraces. When the market, remember, the stocks drive the sectors drive the general market. If the sectors in the general market start to show enough weakness, that's basically telling you that a lot of the stocks are showing even more weakness because they're starting to pull them down. Now, those will produce bounces, but you always want to buy into strength. And so you want your sectors in your general market to still be showing strength and just momentary weakness. If we get the setup that I've talked about right at the beginning of the show, the structure in place to where we could get a larger decline, then you don't want to just buy the retraces. You want to wait until they're deeper. So, I mean, it's just kind of common sense. So, I do look at those things. I don't just blindly buy them. But, so the next one, FB, 6.68% down today. Yeah, I got hit pretty hard. What do you think about the idea that short sellers disappear on Friday on the fear of a resolution? The market tends to go up on such days. Well, I think that's, I think that if you've been short the market, if you've been shorting the market off and on all week, right, and pushing it, why wouldn't you cover? It's no different than if you've been pushing it higher all week and you get at the end of the week and you just want to take some of your profits off the table, right, and come out Monday and start over again. Sure, I mean that definitely can happen. You've also got earnings on Friday, which will be another wild card, and yeah, I think that if you press into Friday and we don't get any kind of lift, yes, you could get a sell-off. Today's Tuesday, right? So tomorrow will be kind of a pivotal day to see how this reacts. Can we get any kind of bounce out of this quote-unquote Fed nomination when it happens? And does it hold at all? And I don't know that it will, actually. These markets want to test those areas that I talked about. And it actually would be better, it'd be more bullish if they did it with no volume. Now, that would set up a much better bounce. So we'll see how it plays out tomorrow. But yeah, when you come into Friday, you've been selling all week, yeah, it's a good time to cover. I don't see anything on the XLV that support is ABCD 420-ish. Please comment. I didn't look at the XLV numbers. We can pull them up and see what they look like. Yeah, I mean, you really don't have much until you get back to here. That's 49.72. So that structure is the top, 52.19. You take it to here. Let me just throw it in my spreadsheet so I can get the numbers on it. So 52, where's she at? XLV. Here we go. 52, what did I say, 19? Get back over here. 52.19 down to 50.27. And up to, I think we set the high, yeah, 51.26. That takes us to 49.37. That bottom is 49.72, so somewhere down in there. And there's really not much down there. It would just be the completion of the structure. So 49.37. I'm running out of time. Let me quickly hit these other ones. Looking at enter point of DSX on the dailies. DSX, that's a shipping stock. It's been coming back. I look at this bar, the August 14th bar. VIX, do I look at the VIX? Not particularly, but the VIX is, I actually did have the VIX up and looking at it today because I wanted to see how it was trading. I think I still have it sitting here. Here's a 5-year weekly. You can see it's pushing up into those areas. These spikes are usually the turning points. That's what this thing's doing. Again, I don't follow it that closely though. Can I look at FBNK? Let's see what FBNK looks like. And I'm going to have to expand this show to an hour if we do this well, huh? So FBNK, what is this baby doing? Oh, it's held up today and actually pushed higher. Well, anything that goes up on a day like today is telling you it's got strength. So yeah, it's nice. I would think that what I would do here is I wouldn't, if I'm in it, I'd stay in it. I just wouldn't probably buy it here. Maybe if it comes back into the top of this bar, you might buy it tomorrow right at the end of this. This is going to disappear tonight because it's pushing into resistance. And the last one, XLV, I redid the ABC and came up with 49.50. Yeah, I just gave you my number. I think it was 49.37. Okay, I'm going to leave it at that. I'll catch you folks tomorrow. I think tomorrow you're going to see either you get a bounce and it's weak. Best thing for the bulls would be actually for this thing, even on a bounce, come back down, retest, do it on lower volume, then get your spike up. You get a much better spike out of it that way. And then we'll see how that carries. That's going to be the key. How does it carry when it bounces? If you don't get much of a carry, folks, that structure that's going to set up this week on the weeklies is going to be problematic, and we're going to have to really pay attention to it. Have yourself a great night. Appreciate you being there. Tell a friend, tell two. As always, I'm L.A. Little. This is and was your daily TA wrap. Have a great one. Good night.